Today we will cover 8 tips you must follow to avoid violating a restraining order. Stay tuned until the end because we will go through an actual Louisiana Uniform Abuse Prevention Order so you can know how to read it and what to be on the lookout for. Tip number 1 is to familiarize yourself with the order. The first step is to thoroughly read and understand the protective order. Take your time to review all terms and conditions, as each can vary in its restrictions and requirements. If you have any questions or need clarification, you should always reach out and call a lawyer. Tip number 2, maintain distance. It's crucial to maintain physical distance from the protected person. Ensure that you fully comprehend the designated distance mentioned in the protective order and strictly adhere to it at all times. Typically, protective orders require you to stay at least 100 yards away from the protected person. Stay tuned because when we get to the end of this video, I'm going to go through an actual order and help you understand how to read it. Tip number 3 is to look at communication alternatives. Now, all that really means is you shouldn't be calling this person constantly or texting them if they don't want to communicate with you and this is somebody you have to communicate with. For instance, if y'all have kids, you still have to co-parent or at least meet for exchanges of the children. A lot of our courts are now recommending, and some are even requiring, that the parents sign up for a service such as Family Wizard. This allows you to make sure your communications are kept the way they should be. Nobody's out of hand. The lawyers representing the parties typically has access to the communication. So if a client begins to get out of line, the lawyer can kind of rein them back in. And if the matter ever has to go before the judge will see these messages. So the safest thing you can do is keep the communications, cut them completely off if it's somebody you do not have to communicate with. If it's somebody you have to communicate with, keep the communications to a bare minimum and keep the communications to a method or means that you can easily track the communication if an issue comes up or some allegations arise. So when it comes to looking at communication alternatives, you should avoid any form of communication with a protected person, even if it seems harmless or well-intentioned. Utilize the methods I've already talked about, including email, because your emails are easy to save and pull back up later if needed. Tip number 4, respect social media boundaries. If there's a protective order in place against you, you don't get to circumvent it by saying, I don't call or text, I only like his pictures, or I only like her photos, or I only text or inbox on social media. Don't text, don't inbox, don't DM, don't comment. If you are reaching out to someone who has a protective order against you, you will be considered violating it. There's no social media exception where you can go in a courtroom and say, look, judge or prosecutor, I don't call or text her phone ever or his phone ever. I just send the messages on social media. That's not going to work. You're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. Tip number 5 is to attend court hearings. Be punctual when attending court hearings related to your protective order. If you fail to appear, the consequences can be severe and actually have a negative impact on the case itself. If you show up late, chances are the judge will order you to pay a fine for being late. If you do not show up at all, the judge is going to issue a bench warrant and you will sit in jail. So be punctual and show up. Show up and be punctual. Tip number 6, and this goes to both parties, especially the person who has the protective order in place for their benefit. Tip number 6 is simply to comply with custody arrangements. Most protective orders are going to have a provision in it that specifically states this does not supersede or override any pre-existing child custody agreement, court orders, arrangements. So if you have a court order for custody and somebody goes get a protective order against you, you can make an argument, and most times you'll win, that I still want to be able to exercise custody and visitation pursuant to my custody agreement. I'm going to show you where that's usually found in the uniform form when I go through it later, but both parties need to comply with custody arrangements. Now, when you do have the exchange with the other person, there's no need, just exchange the kids. There's no need to chat, talk, start an argument, have a disagreement. Keep the communications very limited. In fact, you should limit them to only things that are necessary with respect to exchanging the kids. Tip number 7, you need to inform your family members, your friends, your coworkers that there's a protective order in place against you. You do not want these people reaching out to the protected person on your behalf, because if they do that, you will be considered to be in violation of the protective order and you will end up in prison. So tell your people, don't call him or her, don't call him or her's people, don't text them on your behalf, don't email them, don't inbox them, do nothing on your behalf, because if somebody reaches out to that person for you, you will be in trouble. And finally, tip number 8 is to document interactions. Now, I'm not asking you to walk around with your cell phone out with a video recording every time you see this person. However, it might be advisable, especially if there's any sort of tension, to be alert and aware and record it if possible. If you can't record it, it's not a bad idea to keep a journal where you take down some notes and communicate it with your lawyer or law enforcement or whoever's necessary to say, hey, I have a protective order in place. I still have to see this person because we have kids together. We exchange our children once a week, or we see each other at the children's extracurricular activities, and this is what's happening. Keep a record. Chances are, if it's a one-time deal and it's very minor, nothing's going to come of it. But if it's a pattern and you have it well documented, you're going to be in a good position to make an argument to the judge that the other person violated it, or the person who has it is actually the problem here. That often happens. A person will get a protective order and use it and abuse it to someone who's not even bothering them. So whether you are a protected person or you are the subject of the restraining order, the protective order, document issues. So if the matter ends up in court, you'll be prepared. So now I want to go through an actual Louisiana Uniform Abuse Prevention Order. The first area we need to look at is in the top right corner. Now, if we look closely, the first box is case/docket. When the district attorney files charges against you in court, the case or docket number will be listed on that filing, and it would ultimately end up on this protective order. Arrest or booking, this is typically just the police agency that arrested you. The court is going to be whatever parish you live in Louisiana, that's the court. The division is the judge your case gets allotted to. And obviously the city or parish, and we're in Louisiana, so the box for state is going to be checked as Louisiana. The next section to take a look at is the protected person section. So typically you'll find the person's first, middle, and last name, and then you have additional identifiers, the date of birth, the race, the sex of the person. Next, we need to look at the defendant. If the restraining order is against you, this is where your information will be located. We'll start by defendant's name first, middle, last. If you have any alias, which is a nickname, they'll put your alias in that box. And here's additional identifiers for you. If you're the defendant, they'll have your sex, race, date of birth, height, weight, eye color, hair color, and they may even include your social security number. Some judges will redact that, but they will have your driver's license number, the state, and the expiration date. The next thing you need to look at that's really, really important is the expiration date. How long is this thing going to be in place? If you look here where it says expiration, that is going to include the date it expires. You have to adhere to all terms of this protective order until that date of expiration. The criminal order of protection section, this just lists the charges that you're charged with if you're the defendant. As you can see, I did skip over a few items, but I'm really focused here on just hitting the high points so you cannot violate this thing. Some of this information is important, but not really important with respect to whether you're going to end up in jail or not for violating it. I'm solely focused on what a person needs to be aware of so they don't violate this thing. So the next section covers the relationship, Part C. As you can see here, Part C is where it will be indicated your relationship to the person. As you can see in Part C and D, this is where one or more of these boxes will be checked to show the relationship between the parties. Section F is just standard language in a uniform form, which basically says the judge believed there was enough evidence to support ordering this protective order against you. Now, when we get to page 3, this is the most important part of a protective order. You need to get to the section where it says only orders initialed by a judge shall apply. The first one says, you are ordered not to abuse, harass, assault, stalk, follow, track, monitor, or threaten the protected person. Number 2, you are ordered not to contact the protected person personally or through a third party, such as a family member or friend, or via public posting, Facebook, Instagram, by any means, including written, telephone, or electronic, text, email, messaging, or social media communication. Number 3, you are ordered not to go within 100 yards of the protected person. This is typically the minimum distance I see in these protective orders. Now, you remember, there still can be an exception if it's a child sporting event. Number 4, you are ordered not to contact the protected person's immediate family, personally, through a third party, or via public posting by any means, including written, telephone, electronic communication. Immediate family member, and it defines it for you, so there's no excuse. You don't get to say you didn't know. Spouse, mother, father, aunt, uncle, sibling, or child of the offender, whether related by blood, marriage, or adoption. Number 5, you are ordered not to go within 100 yards of the residence or house of the protected person. Number 6, you are ordered not to go to the protected person's school or the protected person's place of employment. Number 7 is typically implemented when you need to go to the house and retrieve some belongings. Number 8 is typically used when there's some belongings or personal items you need to retrieve also. Number 9 simply covers costs and penalties the judge may order you to pay. 10 will apply if the court orders you to enroll in a court-monitored domestic abuse intervention program. The court typically names the program or person you need to report to and gives you a deadline by which you have to comply with the orders or complete the class. Number 11 is just like number 10, it's just a different class, court-approved course on counseling or therapy. Number 12, the court could order a psychiatric evaluation. Number 13, the court can order restitution requiring you to pay for any damage or loss you caused. Number 14, the court can order you to wear electronic monitor, which is simply a GPS device. 15 is very important, is other. In this section, this is where the judge typically notates any exceptions. For example, if there's a pre-existing child custody agreement, this section right here will let the parties, the police, and anybody else who needs to see this protective order, it'll let them know I'm not in violation because my exception, I'm just here to get my kids, applies, and it's listed right here. So make a special note of Section 15, especially if your situation has special circumstances. That pretty much wraps up my discussion on the 8 tips you can follow to avoid violating a protective order. If you found this video helpful, click the like button and subscribe to catch future videos. Take care, folks.